If you don't learn to control your emotions, they will control you, and that can cost you more than you think. Have you ever felt like your emotions have hijacked your decisions, taking you down a path of regret? From getting upset in the heat of an argument to making impulsive choices in moments of stress, uncontrolled emotions can steer us away from the life we want to create. But here's the real question. What if you could flip the script and gain control over your emotions? Instead of being at their mercy, what if you could transform those emotional triggers into sources of strength, clarity, and resilience? Today, we're going to dive deep into how Stoicism offers a powerful framework for emotional control and building mental resilience. If you've ever found yourself spiraling out of control or feeling overwhelmed by life's emotional challenges, you're not alone, but there's a way out. And it starts with understanding the principles of Stoic philosophy. By the end of this video, you'll learn exactly how Stoic teachings can help you regain control, build emotional discipline, and embrace a life of purpose and mental strength. So stick around. The key to mastering your emotions is closer than you think. Sign 1. The need for external validation. We live in a world where seeking approval from others has become a daily ritual, whether it's a comment on social media, a like on an Instagram post, or constant affirmation from others. It seems like many people can't escape the need for validation. But here's the truth. This constant search for external validation is not only draining, it's dangerous. It saps your energy, weakens your self-worth, and often leaves you feeling empty, no matter how many likes or compliments you receive. In the context of Stoic philosophy, this need for validation stands in direct contrast to one of its core principles, self-sufficiency. Stoicism teaches us that true worth comes from within, not from the fleeting opinions of others. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know who you are." This sentiment captures the Stoic belief that your value is intrinsic, not dependent on external factors. So when someone constantly seeks validation, they are not only neglecting their own inner worth, but they are also giving away their power to others. This behavior, though, doesn't just affect one's sense of self. It can have damaging consequences in relationships too. When someone constantly seeks validation, they put unnecessary pressure on those around them, often leading to toxic dependency. For instance, imagine a relationship where one partner consistently needs constant reassurance. The other partner feels drained and may even start to feel disconnected because the dynamic is no longer about mutual respect or emotional connection, but about meeting the need for validation. In such relationships, insecurities often thrive, causing more harm than good. Now let's take a look at a modern-day example. Think about someone who's constantly posting on social media, seeking affirmation through likes and comments. If those posts don't receive the expected response, they might feel worthless or rejected. This is a powerful illustration of how the need for external validation creates an emotional roller coaster, leaving them vulnerable to swings in self-worth based on superficial interactions. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, encourages us to focus on the things within our control, our actions, our thoughts, our reactions. The opinions of others, they're outside our control. Self-sufficiency is the Stoic antidote to this. It's about focusing on who you are internally, not relying on others to define you. When you start to practice this, you shift from seeking approval to building confidence in yourself, something that lasts far longer than a like or comment ever could. So, if you found yourself caught up in seeking validation from others, pause and ask yourself, how often have you let someone else's opinion dictate your happiness? How much power have you given away by allowing external validation to shape your reality? Now that you've reflected on this, we'll dive deeper into the next sign, the emotional roller coaster. But before we do, take a moment to think. If your self-worth wasn't dependent on others, how different would your relationships and life choices be? Sign 2, the emotional roller coaster. There's an undeniable truth that many of us face in today's world. Emotions often take the driver's seat in our lives, steering us in directions we never intended to go. For some, life can feel like an emotional roller coaster, 1 minute on top of the world, the next plunging into a pit of despair or anger. This constant fluctuation isn't just exhausting, it's destructive. The problem with riding this emotional roller coaster is that it causes you to make decisions based on fleeting feelings rather than rational thinking. And when you act out of impulse, You're giving away your power to your emotions. In Stoic thought, this is precisely the kind of behavior that should be avoided. The Stoics argue that emotional control is not about suppressing feelings, but about managing them, ensuring they don't cloud judgment or lead us into chaotic decisions. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, writes, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." This means that unchecked emotions often exaggerate situations, creating suffering where there need not be any. By practicing emotional regulation, we allow ourselves to see the world more clearly, free from the distortion caused by sudden emotional outbursts. Let's take an example from everyday life. Picture someone who is caught up in a dramatic argument with a partner, and in the heat of the moment they say something they later regret. The emotional intensity of the situation clouds their reasoning, and the conversation becomes about winning the argument rather than finding a resolution. This is where the emotional roller coaster wreaks havoc. Not only does it affect the immediate relationship, but it can also create a pattern of unproductive behaviors that damage long-term personal growth. The Stoic way of life teaches that we must rise above these emotional extremes, not let them define us. Seneca advised that instead of allowing feelings like anger or sadness to dominate us, we should step back and reflect before reacting. This reflective practice helps us regain control and make decisions based on wisdom rather than emotional impulses. So, when faced with a moment of intense emotion, ask yourself, what is truly under my control here? How can I use my emotions constructively instead of letting them dictate my actions? By understanding the nature of your emotions and choosing how to respond, you're practicing emotional control and taking another step toward mental resilience. Now that we've explored the emotional roller coaster, let's move on to the next destructive sign, the inability to take responsibility. How often have you blamed someone or something else for your own mistakes? Reflect on that as we continue. Sign 3. The inability to take responsibility. One of the most challenging habits to break is the tendency to shift blame. It's an instinct many of us share. When things go wrong, it feels easier to point fingers than to look inward. But here's the problem. Refusing to take responsibility for our actions not only weakens our personal growth, but also compromises our ability to evolve. If you constantly blame others, you're avoiding the real issue, and that is your role in the situation. This inability to take ownership doesn't just affect you, it also erodes the trust and stability in your relationships. The Stoics, however, have a different approach. In their philosophy, personal responsibility is a cornerstone of emotional strength. Epictetus, one of the great Stoics, famously said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." What he meant was that our responses and our responsibility in any situation lie within our control. When we start to own our actions, we regain power over our lives. Blaming others only shifts control away from us, leaving us powerless. Let's apply this to a real-world scenario. Think about a woman who repeatedly blames others for her failures, whether it's her boss, her partner, or her friends. She might claim that she lost her job because her boss was unfair, or that her relationship failed because her partner didn't communicate. While there may be truth in external factors, the key question is, what role did she play in these situations? By refusing to take responsibility, she avoids the opportunity for personal growth. When we accept responsibility, we shift from being victims of circumstance to active participants in our own lives. We regain the power to make better choices moving forward. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes invaluable. By focusing on what we can control, our actions, our responses, and our attitudes, we free ourselves from the burden of blame. This does not mean we ignore external challenges, but we take full responsibility for how we react to them. The Stoics understood that true freedom comes from within. Once you embrace this, you begin to shape your life, not based on the faults of others, but on your ability to take ownership of your choices. Now, think about this. How much of your life are you currently blaming on others? What would change if you took full responsibility for your actions and reactions? The shift can be profound, and it's essential for building mental strength and emotional resilience. With this understanding, we can now look at the next sign, the destructive need for drama. How often have you allowed drama to control your interactions, making everything more complicated than it needs to be? Let's explore how this affects your life. Sign 4. The destructive need for drama. In every relationship, there comes a point when tension arises, when misunderstandings happen and emotions run high. But for some, this is not a passing moment. It's the fuel that keeps them going. Some people thrive on drama. Whether it's constantly creating conflicts, exaggerating problems, or stirring up unnecessary chaos, the need for drama can be an insidious force that destroys relationships and disrupts peace of mind. Drama may seem exciting or attention-grabbing in the short term, but its long-term effects can be disastrous. The Stoic philosophy, in stark contrast, teaches us to value tranquility and inner peace above all else. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, wrote, "Be yourself. Don't allow yourself to be pulled by the opinions of others or the need for conflict." This is a call to center ourselves in the midst of emotional chaos, rather than being swept away by it. Drama, according to Stoicism, is a needless distraction from what truly matters in life: mental clarity, emotional balance, and personal growth. Consider a woman who thrives on constant emotional turmoil. She might find herself perpetually in arguments, either with her partner, her friends, or even at work. These conflicts may seem urgent and essential, but they only serve to drain her energy and disrupt her peace. What's worse, drama becomes a cycle, each conflict leading to another, and each argument sowing more distrust and misunderstanding. Over time, the constant chaos starts to erode her mental resilience, leaving her stuck in a loop of negativity and emotional instability. In such situations, Seneca's words are powerful. A man is not hurt by what happens, but by his opinion of what happens. The drama, the conflicts, and the struggles are often not as painful as we make them out to be in our minds. The Stoic approach is not to run from conflict, but to face it with a calm mind, to disengage from unnecessary drama, and to cultivate peace within. This doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations, but it does mean maintaining clarity and emotional control in the midst of those conversations. Now think about your own life. How often have you found yourself pulled into drama, whether by your own making or the influence of others? Reflect on how much emotional energy it has cost you and whether it was truly worth it. When we let go of the need for drama, we free ourselves to focus on what really matters, building meaningful connections, pursuing our goals, and cultivating the kind of mental resilience that allows us to navigate life with purpose and balance. Now that we've explored the dangers of drama, let's move on to the next sign: the compulsive desire to control. How often have you tried to control every aspect of your life and the lives of others? It's time to explore why this need for control can be so harmful, both to you and to those around you. Let's dive into this crucial issue. Sign 5. The compulsive desire to control. There's a certain allure to control. In a world that often feels unpredictable and chaotic, having control over every aspect of your life, your relationships, your career, your environment, seems like a way to ensure stability and security. But here's the harsh truth. The more you try to control, the more you risk losing. Control is an illusion, a concept that, when taken too far, destroys your peace and undermines your mental resilience. The Stoics understood this fundamental truth deeply. They taught us that we should focus on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to life's challenges, while learning to let go of everything else. Seneca captured this beautifully when he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." When we attempt to control everything, we lose sight of what truly matters. We become consumed by the need to manipulate our circumstances, and, in doing so, we give up our power to maintain emotional clarity and peace. Take a moment to consider the kind of person who feels the need to control every detail of a relationship. Perhaps she micromanages every decision, from the most trivial to the most significant. She demands that things go a specific way, whether it's how the partner spends their free time or what they wear to a social event. This behavior doesn't come from a place of care or love. It's driven by insecurity, by the fear that if things aren't under control, something bad might happen. The irony, however, is that this compulsion for control pushes others away and disrupts the natural flow of a relationship. This need to control can also manifest in the workplace. Someone who is obsessed with overseeing every aspect of a project, constantly double-checking every decision, and micromanaging every team member, often stifles creativity and collaboration. Instead of creating a space where everyone can thrive, this person builds an environment of stress, inefficiency, and resentment. The Stoic way of life encourages us to recognize what is within our power and let go of the rest. The more we try to control, the more we lose our own peace. Epictetus, another influential Stoic, reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. By learning to focus on how we respond, rather than what we try to control, we regain our inner calm and mental resilience. It's about letting go of the urge to control others and instead fostering an environment of mutual respect and understanding. So ask yourself, how much of your life are you currently trying to control? How often do you find yourself frustrated when things don't go according to plan? Realizing that some things are simply outside your control can be a liberating experience. It allows you to release the stress and embrace the flow of life as it comes. Now that we've explored the compulsive need for control, let's move on to the next sign, the inability to learn from mistakes. How many times have you found yourself repeating the same mistakes? Let's dive deeper into how this pattern affects your personal growth. Sign 6. The inability to learn from mistakes. Mistakes are inevitable. They are a part of life, an integral part of growth. Yet, there's a pattern that many fall into, one that can significantly hinder progress. The inability to learn from mistakes. The cycle of repeating the same errors, making the same poor choices and never growing from those experiences can lead to frustration, missed opportunities, and stagnation. Worse yet, it leads to emotional stagnation, a constant loop of disappointment and self-doubt. The Stoic philosophy teaches us to approach mistakes differently. Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Mistakes, according to Stoics, are not something to fear or hide from. They are opportunities for self-reflection and growth. When you make a mistake, you are presented with a choice. You can either dwell on it, allow it to define you, or you can use it as a stepping stone toward becoming a wiser, stronger person. The key is to reflect on the mistake, understand why it happened, and use that insight to adjust your behavior moving forward. Take, for example, someone who repeatedly chooses toxic relationships. Despite the pattern of disappointment, they continue to make the same choices, failing to learn from the past. Each failure doesn't bring about growth, it brings about further emotional pain. Yet a Stoic would approach this differently. Instead of blaming others or seeing the failure as something to avoid, they would look inward and ask themselves, what led me to make these decisions? How can I adjust my thinking or behavior to avoid this pattern? In real life, this principle shows up in all areas of our existence. Perhaps you've found yourself making the same financial mistakes over and over, spending impulsively, failing to save, or investing without proper research. The Stoic mindset would ask, what is the lesson in this? How can I change my actions to ensure I don't repeat this mistake? By learning from each failure, we build a foundation for future success and, importantly, we build mental resilience. The cycle of repeating mistakes can easily be broken if we simply change our approach to them. Self-reflection is the key to breaking free. The Stoics didn't shy away from acknowledging their mistakes. They embraced them as moments for growth. By doing so, they turned their errors into opportunities to sharpen their judgment and improve their emotional intelligence. This commitment to learning from failure is a hallmark of mental toughness and personal growth. So, here's a question to consider. What mistakes in your life have you repeatedly made? How can you break the cycle and learn from them instead of being defined by them? When you take responsibility for your mistakes and use them as stepping stones, you're actively working toward emotional balance and long-term personal development. Now that we've examined the importance of learning from mistakes, let's move on to the final sign, the focus on superficiality over depth. How often do we get caught up in appearances and neglect what truly matters? Let's explore how this affects our lives. Sign 7. The focus on superficiality over depth. In today's world, where appearances often hold more weight than substance, it's easy to fall into the trap of valuing superficial things over what truly matters. For some, the pursuit of status, appearance, and material wealth can overshadow the more profound qualities that define a person's true worth: integrity, kindness, and emotional maturity. This focus on superficiality, however, can create a sense of emptiness, leaving people feeling unfulfilled despite their outward successes. The Stoic philosophy stands in stark contrast to this obsession with appearances. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, believed that true virtue lies in the development of one's character, not in external markers of success. He once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In other words, our worth is determined by our inner qualities, not by our outward appearance or material possessions. The Stoic path encourages us to focus on cultivating wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, qualities that build true character and lasting fulfillment. Consider a person who spends all their energy on maintaining a perfect image, always looking stylish, flaunting their wealth and seeking social approval. Yet, when you scratch the surface, they lack emotional depth. They may struggle with self-awareness or empathy, unable to connect with others on a meaningful level. This focus on superficial things often leads to dissatisfaction because it neglects the very essence of human connection: shared values, mutual respect, and emotional maturity. Superficial relationships are shallow and fleeting, while those based on character and virtue are deep, fulfilling, and enduring. This desire for outward appearances often blinds people to the true sources of happiness and contentment. Epictetus emphasized that we should strive to cultivate inner peace, saying, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In the pursuit of superficiality, we ignore how we react to life's challenges and the character we develop through adversity. By focusing instead on building our inner virtues, we become better equipped to face the complexities of life with mental strength and emotional balance. It's important to ask ourselves, what am I valuing more in my life? Am I placing more emphasis on outward appearances, or am I nurturing the deeper qualities that will lead to lasting happiness? By shifting our focus from the superficial to the substantive, we align ourselves more closely with the Stoic way of life. This shift not only brings personal growth, but fosters healthier, more meaningful relationships built on shared values and mutual respect. As we've explored throughout this video, mastering your emotions isn't about suppressing them, it's about understanding them, taking responsibility for your reactions, and aligning your behavior with the principles of Stoicism. By practicing emotional control, you don't just survive life's challenges, you thrive in the face of them. The Stoic teachings offer a powerful framework for emotional resilience. Instead of being a slave to fleeting feelings, you can choose to become the master of your emotions, creating a life filled with mental clarity, self-control, and lasting inner peace. Remember, self-mastery begins with recognizing that true strength comes from within, and once you tap into that, there's nothing that can derail your personal growth. But here's the critical question: what will you do with this knowledge? The Stoics didn't just talk about wisdom, they lived it. Will you begin applying these principles today, or will you let your emotions control your life? The choice is yours, and it can begin now. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who could benefit from this wisdom. And if you're ready to continue mastering your emotions and building mental toughness, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and leave a comment with your thoughts. Let's continue this journey of growth together. Choose wisdom. Choose Stoicism. Choose the life you deserve.